Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And we also believe that what matters in life is not actually what happens. What matters is what you think about what happens. What we think about what happens. That's why it's so important to take time for a mindset check. Just checking in and figuring out where this episode is finding you today. How are you? I hope that you're doing amazing, and I hope that this next episode really lifts you. I feel so much energy through my body as I'm just getting ready because I know what today is. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, what we're doing is we're diving into my journal when I was 15 years old and pregnant. I started to do this amazing podcast about mindset, and I was laying in bed one night and my heart just started beating right out of my chest. And the thought came to me just that I needed to read these journals so that I could walk through with you at the same time the experiences that I had as a teenager, 15, pregnant, and really working through a lot of things. And so this episode is exciting because I know by looking at the date, because again, I'm not pre-reading the journals, I'm reading them with you. And I know because of the date that Taylee has been born. So I'm super jazzed and excited to jump in. Let's do this. April 4th, 1994. Guess what? Let's start from the top. Wednesday, Misha and Jesse went camping. Yes, camping. Up Beaver Canyon with Gina, Paul, Ashley, and Paul's kids. Well, all day I was uncomfortable and in pain. About 6:30, it started to get really bad. We ended up going to the hospital at 10:30. This is PM. Mary and my mom and sisters, of course, Jesse, was with me at night. No sleep, just contractions, and no pain medication. At 11:30 a.m., I was dilated to a 3, and it stayed that way until about noon, when we had to do something about it because nothing else was happening. They had already broke my water, and the baby's heart had almost stopped a few times. So we ended up doing an emergency C-section. Yep, it was a girl. She was born at 2:58 p.m. She is so perfect. She is beautiful and she's healthy. Absolutely nothing is wrong with her. She has tons of dark hair. And the very next day she was lifting her head. This girl is amazing. Imagine what she could tell us if she could talk. She was 5 pounds, 11 ounces, and 18.5 inches long. We named her Taylee Dawn. They let us come home Easter Sunday, April 3rd. Today is one hectic Monday. Jesse is very sick, and I feel like I have so much to do, but I can't do it all. I have or should be taking care of everyone, and I just can't do it. But heck, cut me some slack. I do what I can. I just had an operation. My mom, God bless her, is coming to stay a while and to help me out. I'm really glad because I feel overwhelmed. Oh, yay, she's here, and it's like I'm reliving it. Later on in the story, you're going to find out that this sweet little girl passes away. You know, she graduated, and she's on the other side. She's in a different spot than I am right now. And I was so choked up when I read the words, imagine what she could tell us if she could talk. Oh, what a celebration of life. And I've realized, knowing that this day of reading of her birth would come, it's like I started to feel so excited that with you, I get to walk through her life, like really sit down and walk through her life and the things that I thought about her. I remember when she was born, and I remember I had these crazy contractions, and they had given me Pitocin to increase my contractions, and they were really intense. And the room was full. The room was full of a bunch of family, and I started having a contraction. And this was after being in labor for quite a while. I mean, I remember, like, in my mind, I have the hours calculated that I was in labor as 24 hours. And I think that it's so fun to sit and talk to each other about birth stories, and maybe it's just girls, but birth stories are so amazing. And what we go through to get our babies here. So whether you've had a child or whether you can sit in amazement at what happens when a woman has a child. Oh, it's amazing. I remember being there with a really good friend when she had her baby, and the next day, when you're not the one experiencing it and you get to witness it, I remember just going through the day with my eyes like wide open and feeling this idea of unbelief that I was so aware of just the presence of God. It was one of those experiences that I just allowed myself to be in awe over. And so back to my story, I'm sitting there having this deep contraction. And I close my eyes and brace for the pain. And as soon as I open my eyes, everyone, including the doctor and one of the two nurses that was with me, had walked out of the room. And I remember feeling alarm. Like I knew in that moment that something was wrong. And, I started questioning and interrogating the nurse, like, where did everybody go? What's going on? What's happening? And what had happened is that they walked out of the room to kind of discuss the situation. I think so that, because there was quite a group there that were all people there just really supporting me. And I think that the doctors were trying to just do it the right way. But they started to just discuss with everybody else first that because there was a stressful situation and her heart had stopped a couple of times, that it was probably a good idea to do an emergency C-section. And I'm sure also because I was young that that's part of the reason that they approached it that way. It wasn't long, and they came back in the room and kind of told me, this is what we talked about. This is what's happening. She's under stress. Her heart stopped a couple times. How would you feel about doing an emergency C-section? And really making sure that she can get here safe. And of course, I'm like, let's do it. Let's go right now. And I remember after that, it was so fast. I mean, they wheeled me into that operating room and everything just went really, really fast after that. And the process of having a C-section, like, I remember my arms being tied out to the side. Like, they gave me that spinal tap. Everything happened really fast. And she came. And I do remember, as I wrote in my journal, I was so overwhelmed and impressed. And I think so many parents are overwhelmed and impressed when they can count all 10 fingers and all 10 toes, right? When you can kind of do an assessment and the doctors say everything's fine, and when you really hear them cry right when they come out, it's just you just feel so overwhelmed because I think you've been so inconvenienced, right? You've already done a lot to serve this tiny human. And you're so ready to receive them with tender, loving, open arms and just so much excitement. It's amazing. From the entry, I want to address a couple of things. I want to talk a lot about support and overwhelm. In the story, in the entry, I talk about how I'm really looking forward to having my mom come and support and help me because I feel overwhelmed. And I want to dive into the way that receiving support and just even feeling that others have us in their thoughts does for us. My mom is a woman of compassion. I honestly think that one of the things that I've heard my mom say a lot throughout her life is kind of when she's trying to understand what might be going on for someone, or situations where, people have been in the struggle, is she would say, they're hurting for certain, or are they hurting for certain? And it's just something that she always said, and it almost makes me want to cry because she just is this woman of force with compassion. And it wasn't until years later when I was tending to my sick kids and, high fever, and I remembered back to my mom and the way that she cared about me when I was sick. She would always, stop by a gas station and get me a Sprite. And she always made a really hot rag for my head and then put a dry towel over it just to kind of trap the heat in. And that was just one of her patterns for caring. And then when my child was sick, I had a desire to do the same thing. I remember learning about chimpanzees and how they groomed, and researchers kind of following their patterns and studying them and figuring out, well, why does this one do it this way and this one does it this way? And after years of study, they found out that they simply copied their mothers. And so I love really dropping into my mom showing up after having a baby and her helping me or walking me through, or just the presence of love, the presence of caring and touch. There's a really cool book called The Rabbit Effect, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the experiment it's based off. But one of the quotes from there says that studies show when a person holds the hand of a loved one in distress, the breath and heartbeat of the pair sync up. Their bodies harmonize. And most amazing is that their brain waves harmonize as well, which is known as entrainment. Does it just almost make a tiny little tear in your eye when you think of the power that you have to walk in to a situation where your loved one might be feeling stress and to just touch their hand? Because what you can offer them is stability. I love that. I love it. And I just think, I love the quote, the influence of a good mother can never be erased. And when we show up, just all we have to do is be ourselves. We are teaching generations to love. So the rabbit story that I wanted to tell you about was based on a study in the 1970s. And these scientists, these researchers, wanted to set up an experiment to be able to examine the effects of diet on the heart of rabbits. They used rabbits as their study group. And because of their diet, it was expected that the rabbits would show a buildup of all of these fatty deposits on the insides of their arteries. And the researchers found, and they discovered something that kind of like threw them off and they were really trying to make sense of, that all of the rabbits in this study, there was one group that had 60% less of these fatty deposits than all the other rabbits. And everything had been controlled and they were so confused and they couldn't figure out why. And the rabbits even came from the same breed in New Zealand. They had an identical gene pool, the whole thing. And so they fed them equal amounts of food and all of the stuff. And then the scientists, after they looked at all of everything that had been controlled, they noticed that all of these rabbits that were 60% better than the other ones had come from the same caretaker. So each of the rabbits were all assigned different caretakers, and all of the ones from this particular scientist's group were 60% better than the other rabbits who were fed the same food. And they couldn't figure out exactly what it was, but they started to look into that. And one of the other scientists reported she was an unusually kind and caring individual. And when she fed the rabbits, she talked to them, she cuddled them, and she pet them. She couldn't help it. It's just how she was. She did way more than just give these rabbits food. She gave them love. And at first, they were a little apprehensive to just assign that to the study and call it quits. So they decided to redo it. They did the study again, controlling every single thing that they could, really testing for, is the love of a particular scientist, this scientist, and the way she is, her vibration, her being, the way she walks in and holds and loves these rabbits. Is that really what's making the difference? And they found out that yes, it was. Kelly Harding, that published The Rabbit Effect, the book, she said, take a rabbit with an unhealthy lifestyle, talk to it, hold it, give it affection. The relationship made a difference. Ultimately, she concludes, what affects our health in the most meaningful ways has much to do with how we treat one another, how we live, and how we think about what it means to be human. Absolutely beautiful. Even the power of us just believing that someone is there supporting us and loving us does incredible things. And I'm sure that you guys have caught on to the pattern of the podcast where we do one podcast where I read from my journal and I really dive in with you guys. And then I release another one in the week that is a story that has to do with the podcast. So it's kind of something that I might want to pull out of the podcast and enhance, but let you break it down on your own. Really let you kind of walk through how that fits into your life and the thing that you can attach to or learn from or whatever that is. And this week's story is about the power that we have in our life. It's actually a children's book, and it's so cute. It's called Somebody Loves You, Mr. Hatch. And that will be Friday's episode. And it really illustrates the power that we have when we even only believe that someone is loving us and supporting us. It's amazing. And now I want to check into overwhelm, because I think it's such a natural thing for us in our life, no matter what we're going through, especially mothers that have just had babies. But I think it's a very natural feeling in this world where we have so many things to accomplish, and you know, we can't just go back to the days of Little House on the Prairie, you know, when there just didn't seem to be as many demands for our time or our mind to be able to handle. I remember when my second baby was born, my first boy. And I remember having a list. I was a loan officer at the time and, you know, was completely on maternity leave. but I still had this very proactive way of just having this to-do list of things I needed to accomplish, things I wanted to get done. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, right? That helps us to really move through effectively. It's not bad until it starts overwhelming our minds. And that's what was happening. This second baby was a newborn, and I'm talking by weeks. And I remember reading from a book, something, I don't know, Girlfriend's Guide to Pregnancy or newborns, or I don't know what it was, something Girlfriend's Guide, I don't remember. And I can remember reading, and it was very sarcastic and funny, and it's kind of what I needed at the time, just to like allow you to let go of some of the things that you're holding on to that you think are so important. And I remember reading that she said, if I get a shower some days, I'm lucky. And I immediately was allowed to let go of a lot of the things that I was holding on to. Because I was getting a shower every day. Yes, it was 24-hour constant care. But there was something in her saying that she felt lucky to get a shower that adjusted my mindset, that helped me realize everything that I was doing, everything that I was accomplishing and getting done, and kind of giving me more of a reality or a time to check into what's on that to-do list and what doesn't belong there, and what is really going to make a difference on that list. Anytime that we're feeling overwhelmed, it shuts down our power to do something, which is funny because overwhelm is usually coming from the desire to do something, but it really is this buildup of stress and this thought of, scarcity thoughts. Like, I'm not going to be able to get it done. I'm not going to be, just right. And I feel like I have to check in with this one a lot. Like, even as much as I know and as much as I study about mindset, I have to check in all the time because I'm raising a family. I'm trying to do a lot of things. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to put out a lot of content. I'm trying to do a lot. So I always have to kind of check in with my overwhelm and see how I'm doing and see how it's making me show up. Because we're shut down when we allow overwhelm to come in. And it's because we're vibrating in an energy of being, stressed or scarce or whatever that is. We're stopped and consumed by our thoughts. And then we actually can't get the things done that we need to. It actually paralyzes us, right? And so we're going to talk about overwhelm off and on through the podcast just because it's a huge part of our mindset. But today I want to talk about just one thing, just one. And I want you to think about when you feel overwhelmed, if you've been feeling overwhelmed lately, or if it's something that comes up often for you like it does for me. I want you to think about just identifying what is causing you to feel overwhelmed. Because maybe if you can do that, then you can figure out and turn it around. Like in the moment where I was like, I'm not getting anything done. And then I realized with this new baby, every single thing that is the most important is happening. I am bonding with this baby. I'm feeding this baby. We're both being taken care of. The most important things are happening. And it shifted and then allowed me a whole new world. So anytime you feel that, take a dive inside your brain and see if you can do something about that overwhelming feeling. Can you check into a vibration of feeling gratitude for everything that it is that you do have, that you are accomplishing? Can you be better about scheduling yourself or, cleaning up your area so that you feel organized. What is it that's making you feel the overwhelm? And then can you do something about it? And what inside your mind can you shift to see it differently? Because if you can do that, then the floodgates open and all of a sudden you can get all these things done. It's amazing. And it's just by shifting your mindset. Just by shifting your thoughts about something, you shift your energy towards it. And then all of a sudden you feel power. I love this story that I originally heard from my yoga teacher, and it's just so rich and juicy and good. So think about if you were to dig a well. And if you were digging a well, you would move a crap ton of dirt. So much dirt. And after moving all of that dirt, you hit mud. And mud is even harder, heavier, more difficult to move. But you have to hit the mud before you hit water. Sometimes I think that when we're going through overwhelm, we're in the middle of that struggle and we're feeling that. We're feeling overwhelmed because we're in the deep of something that we're trying to accomplish, like digging a well. But if you can move all the mud out of the way, you eventually hit water. Right? And I just want you to keep in mind, wells used to be like the way people got water. Okay? And I just want you to keep in mind that many wells were dug by one person, and those wells benefited people for thousands of years after they were dug. So keep moving through. Allow your mindset to shift around anything that you become overwhelmed with. Keep digging. Every single thing in your life has a ripple effect. And if you are in the middle of the digging, remember that you're going to be on the other side of that one day. The same way I'm on the other side of this story, reflecting back in my journals. Whenever I feel overwhelmed, there is so much power in this quote that comes from Edward Everett Hell. It says, "I am only one, but I am one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. What I can do, that I ought to do. And what I ought to do, by the grace of God, I shall do." Oh, it just fills my whole soul. It fills it up and makes me realize, gosh, the overwhelm is really just coming in to stop me. And I have so much power. There's so much that I can do and accomplish. And encouragement to keep going and keep moving forward. And to keep showing up. To keep allowing time to support people, right? It's absolutely beautiful. When it circles back, right? Because what would really get in the way of supporting the people in our life? Feeling overwhelmed with our own things? Holy moly, it's like a personal check-in. And again, support doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be walking in and holding someone's hand. Just the touch. It can be just letting them know. Because life is busy. And we can't always drop all the things that we have. Sometimes we have to realize, we're juggling all of these balls. And we have to realize which balls are glass. Right? So that we don't let those balls drop. Other balls bounce. It's fine. But some balls that we're holding are glass. But if you can get overwhelm out of the way, so many times we can actually handle more of those balls. And we see once more that taking time to drop into what's happening in our life, right? Taking a mindset check and kind of looking at our life and being able to see, wow, if I can readjust my overwhelm, all these floodgates open, and then I have the power to show up for people and I'm not stopped anymore. And you want to know one more thing that could really just take you out of overwhelm that I think is so cool as it loops back to everything that we're talking about? It's not necessarily thinking about the people who you can support in your life, but thinking about the people who have supported you. Because the moment that you can think about that, your mindset shifts from overwhelm to gratitude, and from gratitude to inspiration, and becoming such a great cycle in allowing us to have a desire in our heart to be for others what maybe our moms or what people who have supported us in our life have shown up like. It's a beautiful thing, all from the power of checking in and seeing where we are mentally. And because our stories help others, we just want to create this community of people who are sharing how your story of things that you're experiencing when you listen to the podcast allows you to have breakthroughs in your life. One of our listeners named Jessica said, listening to your story makes me realize that everybody does have a past, and we don't know what people have dealt with or have struggled with. So we need to keep that in mind and not judge a book by its cover. She also said, the podcast that I listened to about your dad and the breakthrough that he received being there for you and treating you as a young adult, not discouraging you, and just always having your back. He had to let you grow up and figure things out on your own. As a parent, I just want to fix everything for my boys. But listening to how your parents dealt with this helped me to see that this only made you stronger. I hope and pray that I can do the same for my boys. I'm a fixer and a caretaker, and I want to do everything, and I loved listening to how your parents let you be in control of such a huge decision. Thank you so much, Jessica, for your feedback and for sharing how you're receiving this story. So please, if you also have any insights, breakthroughs, or anything that helped you move through your day because of the things that we talk about on the podcast, all of us, every one of us, would love it if you would also share. You can send your thoughts in an email to hello@myfriendmisha.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at myfriendmisha, and Misha is spelled Mesha. And we'll take a minute on our upcoming podcast to share your story with our other listeners. Also, this podcast can grow with your help. We are still in the baby stages. And if you think this info would help other people, then I would really appreciate if you would share it with someone. It also helps if you leave a review and subscribe. It's a really simple thing that could take you less than 3 minutes. And it allows the algorithm that's promoting our podcast, right, to share it with more people. So I would love it if you would share so that you and whoever else can continue to get the mindset and encouragement that helps us to get through our day. Thank you so much for taking a journey into my past with me today. And remember that as you look at your own past, it can propel you into gratitude, which is an emotion that can trump all the others. Until next time, my friends.